Hello students, welcome back to the biology class. So in the last class we continued the chapter number 17 that is breathing and exchange of gases, and we covered the topic of human respiratory system. In the last class we understood that the human respiratory system consists of respiratory tract and respiratory organ. The organ is a pair of lungs, regarding which in today's class we are going to learn in detail. So we'll be doing the structure of lungs in detail today in the class. And we understood in the last class that the respiratory tract is divisible into two portions for better understanding. That is the upper portion, which is from the nostrils up to the point of larynx, that is the voice box. And the lower respiratory tract consists of trachea, that means the windpipe, and it goes down up to the inside the lungs up to the surface, which is called as respiratory surface, or what is simply called as alveoli, those balloon-like structures. We learned that the nostrils are the first component of the upper respiratory tract, and they are inferior in their position, present at the apex of the nose, and then they are just present above the upper lips, and their shape is ellipsoidal or pyriform. We learned that the nostrils lead into nasal cavity, and the cavity is present between the cranium and palate, and the buccal cavity is separated from the nasal cavity because of the palate present there. The palate is of two portions. The front portion of the palate is hard, or it is called as bony palate, and the back portion is softer. We learned that the nasal cavity is divisible into two portions, two cavities or chambers, and these chambers are separated by nasal septum. We learned that each nasal chamber has three portions in it. The front portion is rich in hair, oil glands and sweat glands, and that portion is called as nasal vestibule, and its main function is to cause filtration and to trap the dust particles, etc. We learned that the next portion is present in the uppermost portion of the nasal chamber, and that is called as the olfactory region, which is rich in the property of sensation, that is the olfaction. The epithelium there is called as olfactory epithelium or Schneiderian membrane, and this membrane carries supporting cell as well as the sensory cell. We learned that there may or may not be present a concha in the olfactory region, and if it is present, it increases surface area, and the person will have extra or stronger power of smell. Then the third region of the nasal chamber is the respiratory region, which is also the conditioning region. It is the middle part and the largest part, and carries ciliated and non-ciliated pseudo-stratified epithelium with the goblet cells for trapping dust particle as well as the microorganism. We learned in the last class that the mouth breathing is harmful compared to nasal breathing because mouth does not have the property of filtration as well as separation and killing of the microorganism, as well as no conditioning is there in the mouth for the air. And from the nasal cavity, the air moves out through the internal nares into pharynx. Now the pharynx is divisible into three parts: nasopharynx, which is connected to the nasal chamber; oropharynx, connected to the buccal cavity; and laryngopharynx, which is also called as hypopharynx, is connected to the larynx below. Then the pharynx is the portion where chiasma of the food and the air takes place, crossing over of the food and the air takes place, because pharynx will lead to the two portions now, the food pipe as well as the windpipe. Now the next portion is the larynx. The larynx produces the sound and is made up of 9 cartilages, out of which 3 are unpaired and 3 are paired, and we learned about their names also in the last class. And we learned that these cartilages develop a cavity inside, which is called as laryngeal cavity, which has upper pair of mucosal folds, which are false vocal cords, and the real vocal cords for producing the sound are the pair of lower mucosal folds, and they are larger and thicker in the case of men. We also learned that the larynx leads to the next part, and that is the windpipe or trachea, and trachea is protected with the help of 16 to 20 incomplete C-shaped cartilaginous rings, as well as carries pseudo-stratified, ciliated, non-ciliated, columnar, cells as well as the goblet cells. We learned that trachea divides into two at the fifth thoracic vertebra level as per the NCERT, and the point of division is the place which is called as carina. And we learned that the trachea divides into two primary bronchi or bronchus, which are also called as principal bronchus. And we learned that the principal bronchus are the one which enter into lung, because there are two lungs, so there are two primary or principal bronchi. Then the principal bronchi divides into secondary bronchi, which enter into the lobes of the lung. One of the lung has 3 lobes, the other has 2 lobes, so that's why these bronchi are also called as lobar bronchi. And each lobe has either 8 or otherwise 10 segments, and accordingly the next branching is called as tertiary bronchi or the segmental bronchi. And then segments carry lobules, so lobules carry the quaternary bronchi or the terminal bronchi. Up to the lobular bronchiole, remember that cartilage is present. Now the terminal bronchi divides into lobular bronchioles, then into terminal bronchioles, then comes the respiratory bronchiole, and after that there will be alveolar duct which opens into atrium, and each atrium carries 6 to 8 alveolar sacs, and these are the place of respiratory gas exchange, which is made up of simple squamous epithelium. We learned that the size of the columnar cells decreases throughout this composition, as well as the number of cilia decreases, and goblet cells are replaced by the Clara cells. We learned that the Clara cells are the glandular pneumocytes which secrete the surfactant, and surfactant is important because it maintains frictionless motion. It helps that the alveolar walls do not collapse, and that's it even maintains the moisture over the lung surface. So that's why surfactant and the surfactant secreting Clara cells are important for the functioning of the lungs.